This is the Become the Lion podcast. If you are aiming to become the top in your industry, not second, not above average, the top, then you have come to the right place. Become the Lion will provide you with weekly insights and motivation needed from our guests on how to escape the common herd that society lives in. If you're looking to change your life, then get ready. Welcome to Become the Lion.
Hi, this is Trevor and Nicholas from Become the Lion, and today on the show we have Andrew Ferebee. Andrew is the host of Knowledge for Men's podcast, 3 times Amazon bestselling author, speaker, and he also runs one of the largest personal development coaching companies for men in the world. Andrew, welcome to Become the Lion.
All right, good to be here.
Andrew, for our audience out there, I came across your website, Knowledge for Men, actually a few years ago, and I've been following it ever since. And do you mind telling our audience what that journey was like? Why did you decide to start the company, the blog, and the website?
Man, it's been such a journey. It's only been just about 4 years ago or so, but honestly, I think it comes from just being really unsatisfied in my life. And I graduated college, got good grades, was a leader in college. I got a job managing this retail store of about 100 employees. It was doing $65 million in revenue. I thought it was a great gig for me. I was excited when I first got it. My family was excited. But after just about 3 months, I quickly knew that this was not for me, that this was not something that I wanted to do, and that it was just every day was the same, and I was lacking control and freedom in my life. So I started obviously hitting the Google, started hitting the YouTube, started buying books, started going to these little events here in San Diego and started really seeing what was possible. I then went through a breakup with this girl that I was madly in love with. And then just combining these things, it created this environment where quitting and pursuing something that I was passionate about just sounded like the only option to add some excitement into my life. Literally, I was just falling into depression if I didn't. So in a way, I was building a business because I was fighting for my life. Like I wanted to regain that adventure, that fun, that freedom. And I just thought, what have I really got to lose here? I hate my job, just lost this girl I was really in love with. And I eventually get kicked out of my parents' house because they think it's ridiculous that I'm quitting my job. They did not support me. And I just started writing about my experiences around personal development, around the breakup, around what it's like to be this kid right out of college who's lost and confused. And then that blog started taking off. The blog turned into the podcast. The podcast turned into a YouTube channel. I started writing books. I started traveling and just going to events all around the world and learning as much as possible. And then I started doing events here in San Diego. The events started with 9 people, then 15 people, then 20 people, then 50 people, then 80 people. We're having our next event coming up pretty soon here with over 200 people in April here in San Diego. And that's it in a nutshell. And we have grown from this little, I remember when I made my first $7 to where we have days where we're doing $25,000 to $30,000.
I think that's excellent for our audience, especially when someone's starting off in a business. They might see someone like yourself and just picture that literally your company just came out off itself and yet you were successful as soon as you started.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There was not much success at all. It was a lot of struggle, and I should have given up many times. There were many times when I should have thrown in the towel, and I really thought about it, and I would have to wrestle with it almost on a weekly basis. It wasn't like I just decided I'm going to do it, and then this great thing just happened. It was just things weren't working. And what other people said worked for them, it wasn't working for me. And that was the most frustrating part. When you're spending money, this guy says it works. You do everything you can. It doesn't work. And you're just thinking, okay, there's something wrong with my niche, or there's something wrong with me, or maybe I'm just not cut out to be an entrepreneur. But those are the moments that really define anyone as an entrepreneur, or anyone who's going to start something, whether you want to do something great and be some musician, an artist, or an entrepreneur, whatever it is, those moments where you're thinking about quitting, those moments define the rest of your life.
I wanted to ask, I know you said you've thought about giving up, or you thought about giving up multiple times, but how did you have the confidence to believe in yourself and keep going?
I think what it comes down to is what is the other, like if you quit, then what happens next? You just quit. And then that sucks. It's like this whole thing, this mission that you went on, you rallied the troops, you shared with the world your message. Everyone knows what you're doing. And secretly, a lot of people might want you to fail. And I think just why not? Like if you quit, you know what happens and it sucks. But if you just kept going, what would make a better story? Like if you can step out of this almost in a spiritual perspective and step out of your body and look at what's happening, what would make a better story for your life? Like what would you like to share with your kids? What would you like to share, or what would you like to have be shared at your funeral if you go that deep? And obviously quitting just doesn't become an option in that situation. You're willing to find resources that you didn't know existed. You're willing to go the extra mile. You're willing to put it all on the line when you think that deep. And so for me, it just wasn't so much of an option. Each time that I thought about it, it's just like, why quit? What would happen if this just worked? What would happen if I kept going? And it's really hard, but there's nothing that's going to be awesome in your life that's going to be easy. It's all hard. And I think accepting that all great things in life require a high level of suffering. So you might as well choose something that's worth suffering for. And for me, that was Knowledge for Men, which is helping men become stronger, grounded men, which is an important thing, especially today.
I want to take it back to the beginning. So you're working this 9-to-5 job. I'm assuming you're making decent money, and your family, friends, they're saying, hey, Andrew's doing a good job with his life. This is what we expected him to do. Go to school, get the job. And you say, hey, mom and dad, I want to quit my job and start this blog. How did you deal with that?
Well, they thought first of all, they just don't even understand what you're talking about. A blog, they don't even know what a blog is. Like, isn't that something like a little diary that you write to yourself? They don't understand what I'm doing at all. And I had the only person in my family who really kind of respected and supported me was my brother at the time. Now, obviously, my parents support me today. But in the beginning, I did not have their support. They thought I had reached the American dream of having, landing a decent job out of college that was going to give me a proven, career, and I would be successful financially, well off, whatever it is. And so for me to quit was almost like a slap to them as parents for everything that they had done to get me to that point where I could have this job and a career. And so in a way it hurt them. And so I guess I have to look at where my parents came from. And I think for many of our listeners, just understand why our parents maybe aren't so supportive of entrepreneurial endeavors, and that they just want us to be safe, and they want us to know that we're taken care of. They want us to know that we have health benefits. But yeah, I did not have the support, and how I handled it. And I think that's, I was 24 at the time. And I think that's a point where we have to decide if you're going to be your own man and write your own story, or are you still going to let your parents write your own story for you? I think I'm not saying to rebel or go against or do anything or say anything mean to your family, but you've got your life to live, and that's it. And if you want to live it, then you got to go and do what you need to do to live your own life. And that's a part of being the hero of your story, where the hero separates from the family. He's going to go on his own adventure. He's going to come back the hero. And that journey might not just take a year or two. That journey might take some time. But I think there's much more respect at the end of that journey for your family, for you. And I think that you, most importantly, won't live in regret of having wasted your 20s or 30s or 40s living up to the standards of your parents. There's a spiritual teacher named David Data. He said, and there's a whole chapter on how you need to cut the umbilical cord, which is to separate from your parents, still love them, but to become your own man, especially to cut the umbilical cord and become your own man.
I'm sure you've heard of Grant Cardone, and in his new book, he brings up the point where it's almost like your family loves you and they don't want to see you get hurt. And then by you taking this risk to go off on your own, you end up going to get hurt by it.
Yeah, they don't want to see you get hurt. Obviously, entrepreneurship is basically just risk taking and problem solving based upon the level of risk that you just took. And that's all you're doing all day. And it's really hard. And there's not a lot of answers. And not a lot of people know the answers to the challenges you have. And your parents likely feel like they may not be able to support you the best they can when you're doing something that's so risky. But if you feel called to do it, then I say do it. Absolutely do it. Burn your boats. I'm that type of guy who does not want to play it safe 100% of the time. I find that I look back on 2016. I was talking with a friend, and we both had like just killer years in business and adventure and fun. And we look back at, okay, what was the difference between what we were doing and what this guy was doing? And it all comes down to this. How much risk were you taking that year? Whether it's in business, whether it's with women, if you're single, or even if you're in a relationship, you're still taking risk, even in that relationship. So how much risk are you taking? And if you're taking strategic risk, at least monthly, quarterly, something big, you're going to have a more exciting year. You're going to have a more adventurous year, and likely you'll have more to gain at the end of that year.
When you bring up risk, was it something that you've developed over time, or was it just something that you threw yourself into?
I don't know if I don't know. I haven't been asked that, but as you say that, I'm thinking it comes to I used to skateboard, and as much as I used to think that I wasted so much of my life skateboarding, I skateboarded for 8 years. I mean, skateboarding or any sort of action sport, you're throwing yourself down a set of 8 to 10 stairs, trying to flip a piece of wood, catch it in the air, and like when you really break it down, or motorcycle, like, all right, we're going to get some dirt, and you're going to get on this thing and go 40 miles an hour, and you're actually going to separate from the bike at one point and put your leg over the handlebars. Like, that is risky. Or even if you're in traditional sports, if you're wrestling, football, things like this, I think that these little things I was doing, such as playing baseball, football, skateboarding, fighting, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they all contain a level of risk. And I think it definitely does apply over. I don't think that skill set was wasted. You're constantly taking risk with your own body, and the risk is your health and pain and injury. So I think these little things that we do when we're younger can really transcend into our lives as we get older.
Let's say someone in our audience is scared of taking risks or doesn't want to take risks. What type of life do you think that they would live?
Oh, it's very simple. You're going to be very complacent. You're likely to have the base things that you want, but you will live a life of regret for sure. And when you're young, I just wrote this article titled The 17 Painful Lessons I Learned in My 20s. I just turned 29. And one of them is I come back to death. That's a very important topic, and that you don't really realize it so much when you're younger because you're so young. You're just like, oh, I got this whole life ahead of me. But as you get older, people that start passing away. Like, not this distant person in your family, like people, like really close people to you, friends you grew up in high school with, someone that you were having fun with in college, an ex-girlfriend from the past is sick and is dying. And it just slowly, like more and more people, you start hearing these stories and you realize this one thing, that death is coming closer to me. And when you think about that, and then you throw in the mix here, living a life of regret, that certainly might be one of the worst things that you can do to a human, is give him a life of complacency, of mediocrity, of living a life that he knew was below what he was capable of because he listened to society, because he listened to his friends, because he listened, unfortunately, maybe it's to your parents. Okay, always love the parents, but you have to be you. And so I think it's a life of regret, 100%. Now, there are people who might be okay with mediocrity on the front end, but deep down inside on the back end, there's no fucking way.
I like that because I feel like it's almost like sometimes like for yourself, did you like feel like deep down inside that you needed something bigger than what you were living when you were working at your corporate job?
Absolutely. Literally, I used to drive to work, and the freeway where I live, everyone goes like 75, 80, and I would purposely drive 45 miles an hour because I wanted to delay how long it took for me to get to my job because I lived only like 8 miles away, and it was too short of a drive. Like I hated going there. And so I just like, is this going to be my life? And there's just no way. Not to say that being an entrepreneur is all fun and games, but there's moments, like it's actually just really hard actually, but there are moments that make it all the while, that absolutely make all that suffering worth it. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about just the moment of fulfillment, the moment of putting something in your mind together and launching and seeing it work, of seeing happy clients who went through a program you created. Those moments are absolutely worth it. And I think to not engage in that is to miss out on a part of life.
All right. So you quit your job, and so now you're going off to start Knowledge of Men. I have to ask you, did you have any money with you, or was it just going throwing right in and just you had to make it work?
I did. I had $23,000 that I had saved up. I knew I was going to quit for about 6 months before I quit. Or I knew that I was likely to quit. I didn't really have a hard date, but as soon as the breakup happened, I was just like, all right, I was going to wait another like 6 months or 8 months. But as soon as the breakup happened, I was like, all right, just let's do it now. This sucks. Life sucks right now. I need to mix it up. I need to change this. I am falling into depression right now.
I wanted to ask you, besides, your family almost holding you back a little bit in a sense, what were some of the other challenges you had to come, or limiting beliefs that you had to get past to become successful?
Yeah, too young. I mean, I started this brand called Knowledge for Men. All right. And I was 24 really when I started it, which is a little, you could say, too young to be. Most guys I was talking to were much older than me. When I was doing events, I would be the youngest one at my event. People would be twice my age with kids and a mortgage. And so too young was a big one. Not ready was a big one. People would tell me that. But yeah, people would just tell me that I'm not ready, I'm too young, I'm not qualified, all this. And so having these things against me, all I knew was that there were some people who were listening. People were showing up to events. People were buying the books and the courses. And so I just woke up every day and worked for them. And even still to this day, being 29, that you could still say that's too young because I still get it. But obviously things are, there's a big team behind me. We have we've done a lot. So it seems a lot easier to get past. But when I first started, the age thing, that, personal development for men, it's a big topic, and not a lot of people are going into it. And then when they see me and I'm the one who's doing it, they're like, who is this guy? He's too young. They almost don't take me seriously. And it had been a struggle in the early stages, especially when you don't have much going for you.
Do you think as your business started to grow, you were finally able to get past these self-beliefs that you had?
Absolutely. I mean, what it is not just the business, the financial standpoint. What it is people giving you testimonials and telling you that what you do is awesome. Guys who are the same age as the people who are telling you that you're too young, stuff like that. So when you start getting those testimonials, you really start building your tribe. You get 10 people to love you, get 100 people, get 1,000. And then once you get the 1,000, you're pretty good. And then you move to a 5,000, then 10,000 fans. I mean, it it goes away. It comes every now and then, but it just doesn't. I just don't listen. Obviously, I just got to do what's right, and I know that there are men out there who want this to exist, and I think it deeply needs to exist, because I wish I had something like this when I was growing up, through my teenage, through my adult, and as I grow, I just start upping my the age bracket of men that I serve.
I'm assuming that when you started the company to where you are now, you've had some naysayers or haters that have come into your life. How have you been able to deal with them? Yeah,
it's Ryan Holiday has a book called The Ego's the Enemy, and I think the ego plays a big role here, where you get, one person says something, and, let's say 100 people say something positive. The one person that says something negative, all your attention goes to that one person, and you really start to believe that it is true. You almost believe that they know something that these other people don't. Maybe this guy right here sees the truth. And what I have learned, just in summary, is to simply ignore. That is the best thing for you to do, is just ignore. But if you try, and I'm talking about these little haters on YouTube, or that leave podcast reviews, or that email me, if you really, duke it out with these guys, they seem to have more time that exists, in the world. They have more hours in the day than you, and they will figure out a way to make you wrong and themselves right. And it's just not worth your time, because you should be focusing on the 99 other people who do like you and helping them get to where they want to go, and doing business with them to grow your business, rather than just this one person. So yeah, ignore. And as hard as it is, ignore.
Andrew, how did you become the Lion in your own life? What do you attribute to your success?
I think two things off the top of my head here is, one, at some point in your life, you need to take full responsibility of your life. That is hands down the most simple piece of personal development advice that exists. But very few people will actually take their life by the reins and go and do something that they want to do, or they'll hold on to excuses from the past. They'll blame other people, but to fully just be naked of all of these constraints and charge forward to create the life that you want. And so taking responsibility, I would say, is number one. And then number two, falling back to what I've shared previously, is take more risk. The more risk that you take in your life, the more adventure, the more excitement, also the more alive that you will be in your life, the aliveness. You can look, if anyone is in their car right now listening to this, or at the gym, just look around at other people, and you'll see that very few people have that zest, that gusto, that aliveness in their soul. A lot of people are walking around looking like they're dead, looking like they're just waiting until they can go back to bed. They literally, when they left their bed, they like kiss their pillow, like, I'm coming back, baby. And they're going to come back to that bed. That's what they're looking forward to. And so when you take risk, there's a book, which is one of my favorite books. It's called The Joy of Living Dangerously. It's by an Indian philosopher named Osho. And he says, when man takes risk, or when man is in a state of danger, which is risk, that is when man comes fully alive. Like, think of when you're playing a sports game and it's coming down to you to make this play happen. In that moment, you are alive. Let's say you're about to approach a girl and she's really attractive. You're about to ask her out and you're feeling all these emotions in your body. That is you being alive. When you're about to walk into your boss's office to quit, each step that you're taking towards that office door, you're coming alive. And I think the more that, we take risk, then the more that we are alive. And I think the more attractive it is to men, I think the more attractive it is to women. And by men, I just mean like respected by men, and attractive to women that you may be attracted to.
Do you think the more risks you take, the easier it gets to take risks?
Absolutely. I would say it's almost like a drug where, I remember maybe it used to take me when I was really young, like 3 or 4 drinks for something to happen. and then it became 4 to 5, and then 6 to 8, and then it just grows and grows and grows. I think risk sort of becomes like that, where these little risks that used to once be scary, slowly you learn how to deal and manage that risk, and you feel more comfortable taking that risk because you have had previous success in taking similar risks to that. So absolutely, the more you take a risk, the easier it is. And so when you see someone who's an entrepreneur and they're in their 40s and 50s and they've been doing this game for a long time, it's easy for them to make all these moves. If you ever sit down and have lunch with these guys, they're like, they're talking such big numbers. They're just on a different ball game. And to you listen in and you're like, wow, like that's so crazy. How is this? How is he able to do this? But he's been doing it for so long that it's normal for him. It's normal life for him. So absolutely, start small and it'll definitely grow like a muscle.
You've had one of the largest personal development coaching companies for men in the world, and I wanted to ask you, how has personal development changed your life and helped you grow into the person you are today?
Personal development is everything. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're always growing and you're always teaching yourself lessons. I think personal development is just kind of like the Matrix, where if you want to learn something, you can do it much faster by plugging in and learning from someone who has gone on a journey, learned the lessons that you need to learn, and shares it with you in the shortest and simplest way possible. Although it doesn't take a couple seconds, it still could take, days, weeks, months, even years. I think personal development is, for anyone who's just reading business books, like just business books, I think you should switch it up and start reading some personal growth books, because you are the only reason why you are where you are. If you want to be somewhere else, then it is you who is stopping you. If you don't like where you're at, then you're the one who created all of that in your life. And so personal development for me is the answer to all of life's challenges. And if you can roll, like when your life is rolling, when you got adventure, when you have friends, when you have an awesome spouse, when you're financially free, not saying that you're this multimillionaire, but you aren't thinking about bills. You aren't concerned about money when you go to the grocery store. If you can buy the store brand or this generic brand, whatever it is, if all of that's rolling, like your business is going to roll too, because you're fully alive. You're fully here. You've taken responsibility for your life. You're going to be able to make the right actions, and you're going to need help. But people are attracted to people who have awesome lives, and they want to help people who are living a great life, but are pushing for something greater as well. Hal Elrod, the author of The Miracle Morning, says, love the life you have while you create the life of your dreams. And I love that, because you got to love today, but you also want to create something awesome for tomorrow.
Speaking of that, I'm sure that you work really hard in your business. And do people ever happen to call you crazy for how much you work?
Well, yeah, absolutely. However, most people I hang out with are doing the same thing. So actually, that's where it comes down to. You're the average of the 5 people you most surround yourself with. I don't have anything against someone who's, has a job. I mean, I had a job too, and I encourage those who are interested in entrepreneurship to pursue it. But I don't really have too many friends that have jobs. I think all of my friends are entrepreneurs, are making 6, 7, or in some cases 8 figures. And that alone, it just happened. I didn't really try and pursue these people. I was just running my business, and you just start meeting people and they start introducing you to people. And as long as you're someone who's moving forward and you're listening, you're taking action, and you show up and ask a lot of questions with these guys slowly, you just find yourself surrounded by a lot of other entrepreneurs. So actually, I don't know if I work the most in my group, but I definitely work really hard.
I know how you mentioned The Miracle Morning, and that's one of my favorite books I've ever read. And I wanted to ask you, what does your morning routine look like on an average day?
Yeah, I'm glad you said average, because I've had spurts where I go all out. But in general, I start off with green smoothie, and then I make organic coffee, And the whole time I'm listening to either some sort of audiobook, or I have these like motivational, there's like motivational tracks on YouTube with all these different random clips of influencers, listening to that. And then I always write my goals the day before. So like if I end my day at 7:30, like I would write down what I'm going to do the next day. So I already know, because you're fresh with what you have accomplished and where you're at. So when I wake up, I already know exactly what I'm going to do. And I just start looking at that. And I think I just like walk around my porch and just drink my coffee and green smoothie and listen to these tracks. And then I take a cold shower. I've been doing this for years. It doesn't really get easy. I know I talked about risk, and so you get used to it. The cold showers, they're still horribly hard, and but I love them. That's another moment where you feel alive. Like when you take a cold shower, you come alive. In that moment when you're screaming like a little girl, that's you coming alive in a way. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then after that, I just get dressed, and then I work from home for a little bit. I try and knock out my biggest objectives for the day because it's peaceful, it's quiet here. And then I go to my office where my team is, and then I work on some of the more team-oriented projects with the team. But yeah, I like to work solo, like more zen-like by myself before I go into the chaos of my office.
I found it funny how you brought up cold showers. I've been doing them myself since September, and I always think like every day it's gonna get easier to go in, but like it's every day it sucks. But I definitely
every day. Yeah, it just sucks. The couple seconds before and then during, but after it's always worth it.
I wanted to ask you, I feel like this happens to a lot of people out in society. I mean, we can see it I'm sure we know friends, family who have done this, but what do you think holds people back from living their ideal life?
I'm thinking of, because immediately my gut reaction is they just don't take responsibility for their life. They aren't taking enough risk in their life. They're listening to other people rather than themselves. Those would be some core ones, but trying to think of something else here. I think it's easy to settle. I think in this world that we live in, there's a lot of ways to get instant gratification, such as drugs and alcohol, porn, entertainment, movies, going to Vegas. There's so many things. There's so many concerts, and there's so many distractions and ways to be instantly fulfilled in the now that it makes your current life, if someone, let's say if it was me working at that job, it could make me feel like this ain't so bad. And you can get caught in that. Life has a lot of these instant gratifications, these ways to entertain you, to make you forget about how miserable your life may be. I laugh because I'm thinking of my own life, and I know a lot. I do know people who are in the corporate track, and they are in, they're constantly like, ooh, like what's the next thing? Like, oh, I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to Vegas. I'm traveling here. They're doing this. Rather than like, what Seth Godin says, where, why not create a life that you don't have to escape from? I live a couple blocks from the beach here in San Diego. My office is literally, you can see the ocean from my beach. It's even closer. My commute is one stoplight away from my house. So I go, woo, and then I get in first, second, and then I have to slow down, and then I park my car. And like, I didn't, I'm not saying this to brag. Like I didn't have any of this. I didn't have anything close to any of this. I used to sleep on my brother's couch, but I wrote all this stuff down. Like I wrote down the amount of money that I want to make, the type of dating life that I want to have, the type of body that I want to have, where I want to work, how I want my office to look like. Literally, we have like books everywhere. We have personal development quotes and posters, and it's all super modern. We have like IMAX and just all this nice equipment, and it's in a nice, the newest building here on the beach. And my team are awesome young hustlers. They just remind me of myself when I was younger, and they bring the energy, and it's like it's just a fun environment. But I just want to state, though, that I wrote all this down first. This wasn't something that I just got lucky and stumbled upon. I had to really fight hard for this, and that's what's possible. I think that's absolutely what's possible here when you become the line.
I like that. I like that a lot, and I love that you wrote it down. Even if it was a couple of years or however long it took you to get it, you still attained it, and that you never gave up even when it got tough.
Yeah, absolutely. What's crazy is when you achieve it, you think it's going to take a lot longer. Years. It took years, just no doubt. It did not take a couple months. But what's crazy is when you do achieve it, you're like, oh, shit, like what? The question is what can I write down next? That's the next question. And you can write something down, and I'm always big about what I write down. It's like I tell my team this. It's like, hey, if you write something down, that's it's an emotional thing for me when I'm going to write down a goal. Like if I'm going to write it down on a piece of paper and put it on my wall, like that's a very emotional thing because I'm actually going to do that. I am going to go through the level of suffering and put myself through that to attain that specific goal. And I think too many people, they write it down and just like, just throw it away. Like that is your dream. That is your goal. And it's very emotional for me. And I'll sit down and it could take me like 30, 45 minutes. Like I just write down one goal and it'll be very emotional when I write it because I'm thinking about how much suffering that I'm going to have to go through in order to attain that goal. And I think that's not what a lot of people think about when they write down goals is what is the amount of suffering that is associated with achieving that goal.
You can even think about all the people that wrote down goals, 2 days, 3 days ago. And I saw it's a statistic the other day, and it's 92% of people fail their New Year's resolutions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, within the first 2 weeks or so. It's like within the first 10 days, and absolutely, yeah, it's a tough thing. I think we get caught up. I think people get caught up in the new season, in porn, in drugs, and alcohol, and entertainment, new Star Wars, whatever it is. I think that those just become easier to do, and when everyone else is doing it, it becomes a lot easier.
There's so many distractions in the world. You can get there. I mean, we have phones, there's social media, we have emails, there's new tasks that have to be done. But how do you put your focus into yourself when you work and produce great work?
Absolutely. So I've accepted that I cannot. There's different style or different like ways that I work. Is an interesting question. So right now I'm working when I write. It requires a very high level of creative output versus if I'm, running a meeting or something where like it doesn't really, I don't have to be 100% like on my game there, like, just like kind of going through this script. But when I'm writing, there's only so much I can write, meaning I've given up on the idea that if I say, hey, I'm going to write for 8 hours, I actually can't. I can actually only write for about 2.5 to 3 hours a day before I actually start getting diminishing returns and my writing just becomes crappier and crappier and crappier and I'm literally getting nothing done and I'm just staring at this sentence and I can't finish it. So I've accepted that I only have a certain level of creative output per day and I know when the best times for me are, which is typically right about now, which is like the afternoon till about like 4 o'clock or so. And then after that, it's I just can't. So I think understanding when you are creative and how much creative output you have is really important because you don't have to fight it. You can just accept it and then move on, get something else done that's a little bit easier, that takes less creative output, and then come back to it the next day and put in your best work, and then come back to it the next day and then put in your best work. So I think just being a little patient with creativity. I think we can be really hard on ourselves to get something done, but I think the creative process is really much of a war inside, and it takes some time, and if we can be patient with those results, then I think we can really pump out some of our best work.
And that reminds me of the Tony Robbins quote where he said people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Absolutely. That's 100% on point. It's literally... If you see, this is such a dumb productivity hack. It's so dumb, it's so dumb because people just won't do it. But like I use a little weekly calendar, and this is where I write all my stuff down the day before. So tonight, at like 7, 8 o'clock maybe, I'll write down what I'm going to have to get done tomorrow. And I won't be hard on myself, meaning I'm not going to put 12 things. It's just unrealistic. I'm literally just going to put 3 to 5 things. And those are the main things that I have to get done. And if I do this in a week, like that's so much stuff. And if I do it in a month, and if I do it in a quarter, and if I do that in a year, like your whole entire business will change. And it's so simple. And, it's just the simple little things done consistently over time that can lead to massive change in your life. And I think we have to be patient with those results. And that's why it's important, going back to Hal Elrod's quote, to love the life you have now while you create the life of your dreams. So in the present moment, you don't feel like you're just lacking and hurting and your life is miserable, but that you're actually happy that you're in progress. And many have said it before, and it's not the actual goal that is worth it. It's the journey. It's the actual time and that struggle inside of the journey, which is actually the best part. And unfortunately, if we're not present and enjoying it, then we're going to miss out on what is the best part.
Andrew, what's your definition of a well-rounded man?
I think a man who is living his path and purpose. He's on his path and purpose, and he's grounded in his thoughts, his words, and his actions. Meaning, I like to say he's not this like leaf in a wind where you come out with someone approaches him, he's like, hey, I got this opportunity, this MLM. He's like, oh shit, and just goes over there. But instead, like, he knows where he's going. He's like a carrier. He's in the ocean and he's moving forward, and anything that gets in his way, he's just going to keep moving forward. He's not going to let these little distractions veer him off course. He's going to the destination that he wants. And the same goes for, with women too, where even if there is a woman, like, he's still going to go on his path, but he is open to bringing the woman on his journey with him. But he's still going down his path. So, I mean, if you think of a guy that or even the audience, if you think of people who are lost, who are easily swayed, who are confused, I mean, it's just they're not grounded. It's not that they're weak. They just need some guidance. They need some direction. And I think it's attractive to both men to see a man and women to see a man who knows where he's going and is on that path. It doesn't matter what it is. You could be a guy running a nonprofit. You could be a guy who's jumping over to LA to become a musician. You could be a guy who wants to build a software company, to a guy who wants to write books. But just to know where you want to go, I think that's what matters most. And then to start walking the path, taking the action towards those goals.
And I really like that for our younger audience who might be listening. They're trying to start a new business or might have a new business, and one thing they might expect 3 months in that they're going to be making $1 million, which we both know doesn't really happen. But another thing, they can jump. They almost they jump from thing to thing to thing. Like, they'll jump from network marketing, and then they'll jump to Forex, and then they'll just jump to drop shipping. And like where you brought up the point, how you really just have to focus in on one thing and really perfect it.
Yeah, all of those can work. Each one that you said can work. I do know people who are in MLMs. I've never really done that path, but I do know people who are doing quite well. I know people who trade stocks and are doing well. I know people who invest in real estate and are doing really well. And when I look at all these people, the difference is that they have been doing that one thing for at least a minimum of 3 years, but in most cases, more like 5 to 7 years. I think 3 years will get you in the game and you'll be doing okay. I think 5 years, you're really going to you're going to have something really good for yourself. And I think being okay with those kind of time frames and just being consistent with just 3 to 5 actions a day towards that specific goal, I think you can absolutely achieve whatever you want. Whatever it is that you want, you can absolutely achieve.
Did you happen to have any coaches or mentors that have helped you to get to where you are?
Well, of course. I mean, they always haven't been official. Like, no one has knighted me. No, I've never had a ceremony. But I, of course, have had men who are in much more successful positions than I am who have given me advice on a monthly basis. Absolutely. And I think the way to approach that is to just ask questions, and then whatever the guy says that you respect, take action, and then follow up and say, hey, I took these actions and got these results. What's next? Okay, because what's interesting about that is 99% of people just won't take the action. They'll just waste the mentor's time. And the mentor is like, all right, I don't want to talk to you because you're asking me the same questions that you were last time, and my time is valuable. You need to, even if it's the wrong action, just go take it and then come back and say, hey, what's next? Okay, and then if you just keep doing that and this guy sees you grow, because I have guys who were like that with me. They've known me when I just made, when I was broke, and then now they see me and we're doing great. And it's just a really amazing relationship to have with someone who guided you and mentored you when you were just getting started to being someone who is reaching some level of success.
Andrew, let's say we're doing this interview in 2020. What do you think has had to happen in your life to make you feel successful?
Oh, man. I already feel, honestly, if it would have took me 10 more years to get to where I am today, I would still be happy. Like, I am so thrilled and jacked that guys tune into my Knowledge for Men podcast. They go to my website, they download, they work with us. I mean, our events are growing, our communities are growing. I feel like a success already in 2000. What are we in 17? So I guess it just comes down to just keep doing what I'm doing because it's working. And, I think adding to that, just building a bigger team and being more of the visionary rather than the executor on a day-to-day basis. So I think that could be something that I could work towards. But honestly, like, I already feel very content with where we're going and where we are. And I know the future is going to be bright.
I like how you said, if it was 10 years from now, you would still be happy, even if you were just getting there where you are today. And I was talking to another guy the other day. I think it's good for our audience, are you really upset if it took you 5 or 10, 15, 20 years to accomplish your goals or whatever dreams you set out for? It's like, shouldn't they just be happy that they are where they are?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the guy who took longer, he's probably smarter too, meaning he probably learned a lot more lessons. He probably has a lot more to share if it took longer versus the guy who may have, got lucky and took an action that got him a significant result, or the market in his industry was more favored. So, yeah, I mean, what does it matter? What's the rush on the journey? Why do we want to rush the journey of life? Why not enjoy the moments? Why wouldn't we want a longer story? Imagine watching your favorite movie and that feeling when the movie's ending, you're like, shit, no, it's almost over. Like, that's like your life. Like, don't you want it to keep going? Don't you want that story? Maybe there's more action and drama and battles to fight. It makes it more interesting. So I think having that kind of perspective on patience and viewing your journey as something that is exciting, even the struggles, the suffering, it's all a part of it.
Andrew, this interview has been excellent so far, and now we're going to enter the lines round, where I'm just going to ask you a couple of quick questions before we end the show today.
All right, sounds good. Let's do it.
What would you tell someone who's starting out and going after their dream?
Yeah, gut level response here is to trust yourself and just take the first step. You just have to take the first step, and it's going to always be scary, but just take the first step and do it now.
Do you happen to have 2 or 3 books that you would recommend for our audience to read?
Yeah, I mentioned one of them, The Joy of Living Dangerously by Osho. When Breath Becomes Air. Oh my gosh, I don't even know who writes it. I just started reading it, but it's about a doctor who he helps people with cancer when they're dying, and then he himself gets cancer and is now a patient at his own hospital that he used to be the doctor at. And it's just a really interesting conversation about death and life. And right now also, and then obviously right now, Tools of Titans is a fantastic read. I think it's it's not necessarily a required read to read the whole book in its entirety, but I think it is a required book to have in your library because it's an excellent resource of a wealth of knowledge.
And Andrew, last question of the day. Where can our audience find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go to knowledgeformen.com and you can check out the podcast. You can check out the blog content that I write. And there's a lot of free resources and things available, video tutorials on becoming a stronger, grounded man at knowledgeformen.com.
And Andrew, I'd just like to say thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with our audience.
All right. It was a pleasure being here. And I really appreciate the questions. Love what you're doing and keep pushing forward. Keep fighting hard.
Thanks for listening to Become the Lion. Everything from today's show will be in our show notes on our website. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Till next week, don't stop grinding.